Welcome to our new Crisis HR course. It's about building HR with minimal or no budget, especially during crisis periods. Today, we're having our first class in an open format, discussing crisis recruiting and onboarding. All right, let's get started. I'll begin by telling you a bit about the course. When a company runs out of money for HR, it often leaves HR professionals stumped, if not depressed. But not crisis management experts who can introduce new benefits even without a budget, strengthen the employer brand, find the right employees, organize training, help the company survive a crisis, and even boost morale. All of this is possible. I've been through it myself. I'll tell you about it. It requires the right set of skills and case studies from those who have weathered crises. In this course, I'll share my experience, knowledge, ideas, and cases so that you can do the same. Why take such a course? You'll learn how to help a company navigate through a crisis and acquire crisis management skills. Trust me, these skills are in high demand, especially in challenging times, so this will be valuable. This is what the course website looks like, in case we haven't met yet. My name is Mike Pratula, and I've worked for various companies. I've even written about my crisis experience here. I encountered my first crisis in life. Well, I'll put it this way, I first experienced a crisis when I started working in 2005 as an intern at Kusotsbank right after the Orange Revolution, and I witnessed the post-crisis period. I was told that they had been giving out loans for a while and there were some complications, but I didn't experience that firsthand. From 2005 to 2008, this was my first job, my first career. I observed what everyone else did, tremendous growth. We hired, growing from 1,000 employees to 6,000. I was actively involved in this. It was Alpha Bank. Then the 2008 crisis hit, and I saw the bank shrink from 6,000 back down to 1,000 employees. I was involved in implementing a project to relocate the operations center to Chernihiv. We had many people being laid off there. I helped them look for new jobs and so on. Then in 2009, I went to work for a company I didn't mention here, where I only worked for a year. But it was a very lively and active year, I would say. It was a company called Marco, a Ukrainian company. The company was struggling as an importer and distributor of premium alcohol. They worked with all supermarkets, restaurants, and retail chains, selling products with delayed payment terms. When the crisis hit, they found themselves in a situation where they had supplied products to everyone, but no one was paying them. Consequently, if no one pays, there's no money. In this situation, I was their HR manager. The company had delayed salaries, but it wasn't exactly a salary delay, because everyone in the trading company had minimal base salaries which were paid on time. The variable part was substantial and it wasn't paid on time. It was paid when customers settled their accounts with the company. And all these supermarket chains and restaurants, they were all up to their ears in loans. The loans were in dollars, and the dollar exchange rate had risen sharply, so they all suddenly became insolvent. In short, it was a very active period where I had to hire people, knowing there would be delays in paying a substantial portion of their wages, and there was a lot to deal with. I'll be sharing this today. Then from about 2010, the situation improved and grew actively again. I joined the STB TV channel, and in 2013 and 2014, we faced another crisis when the dollar exchange rate rose again, and there was a revolution in the country. The company couldn't review or increase salaries, or allow for any additional expenses, but despite all this, the company was striving to grow. This was also very challenging. We managed to reduce turnover despite not revising salaries. There are many interesting cases from that time which I'll share. In my work, I rely on best practices. This is a list of what I track and learn from, whether it's reading research or something else. I'd appreciate it if you could share your job title with me so I understand what you do. In this course, starting from today, we'll have homework assignments. Completing them will allow you to earn our diploma, so please pay attention to them. We issue diplomas on the Excellent Credible platform, where Google also issues their diplomas. This course consists of 6 sessions covering recruiting and onboarding, salary management, reducing bonuses and benefits, crisis training without a budget, crisis performance management and downsizing, crisis communication and morale support, and change management, responding to negative events and emergencies. So we're learning how to continue building a system that brings value to the company during these very active times. This is the program for our class today. We'll discuss what a crisis is and how it affects all processes, what problems it creates for recruiting, how to hire under uncertainty, how to attract candidates to a company facing challenges, how to hire at below market salaries, how to handle negative employee feedback, how to strengthen the employer brand, how to leverage internal resources. That's what we'll talk about today. So let's start with what a crisis is and how it affects all HR processes. I'll explain what a crisis is on the next slide. And indeed, situations like this have a huge impact. Let's keep it brief. Often it means stopping recruitment and hiring at low salaries. It creates problems retaining top employees who dislike that the company has stopped growing. It means reduced training budgets despite ongoing training needs. It leads to declining employee motivation, or rather demotivation, rumors, gossip, and expectations of layoffs. It means no salary reviews and often cutting benefits. It necessitates changes, restructuring, and the need to downsize the workforce. That's how it affects things. So what is a crisis? What do we call a crisis? In our understanding, a crisis is a situation characterized by significant changes and, above all, instability. We've experienced COVID. Now there's both a financial crisis and a military crisis, affecting not only Ukraine but other countries too. Israel, Taiwan is on the verge. Azerbaijan and Armenia also have certain difficulties. In general, it's happening around the world. It's important to understand that all crises in the world are cyclical. This needs to be grasped. And that's the most crucial thing to communicate to employees. There's this great author, Samuel Benner. In 1875, he described the pattern of crisis development and predicted crises many years in advance, and reasons 200 years ahead. Interestingly, what he predicted is coming true. That is, in 1875, he drew this scheme of crises and growth. He says there are cycles of growth and cycles of micro-growth. If we look at 2007, we remember there was growth and then a decline. 2008, it fell. It started rising from 2012, peaked in 2019. There was some kind of micro peak back in 2016. Then in 2023, a fall, and again a slight rise in 2026. There will be a resurgence, a small interim one, and then it will all drop again by 2032 and rise very steeply by 2035. So these are the cycles he wrote about, and I didn't add to it here. There are many charts of actual crises ratings. They're even being compared on the internet, clearly describing what was predicted here. It's great that crises are cyclical, just like periods of growth. So what are HR's main tasks during a crisis? First, in a crisis, when many things are shrinking and falling, it's important to preserve what is called human capital. It's not about specific employees, but about the company's ability through its employees to be competitive and efficient. This includes many things. It's about retaining employees, developing them, motivating them, and so on. Next, you need to help the company navigate through the crisis, overcome all these difficulties, and very importantly, prepare the company in time for the growth wave. Some companies get so immersed in the crisis that when growth begins, they don't notice it and aren't prepared for it, and they can't capitalize on that growth. Because people are still highly demotivated, the company keeps cutting costs, the company doesn't realize it's time to start investing in people, hiring people, and consequently misses opportunities and faces another crisis. So it's important to both help get through the crisis and prepare for the next wave of growth. What challenges does the crisis create for recruiting? We'll now examine each of these points in detail. The first is below market wages. First of all, I want to say that generally, in a crisis, everyone's wages fall. Here's a good chart of real wages adjusted for inflation in the US, and we see when the crisis starts, real wages fall. Yes, due to inflation, wages seem to be going up, sort of, but they're actually going down. Often companies, besides the fact that wages are declining globally, they also start saving on wages, not reviewing them, or even trying to pay less. This creates complications. What should HR do in this case? Either hire at market wages if possible and don't renegotiate employee salaries. So the most effective way, the most correct approach is to create temporary inequality. I know it's difficult, it's unpleasant, people won't like it, but it's a matter of survival. The company can't avoid hiring people at the wages the market pays. A company can hire people at below market wages if they lower their requirements. But few are ready for that. So the second approach is to emphasize internal hiring. When we were going through a crisis at STB TV channel, and couldn't revise salaries, while salaries were constantly growing. Anyway, other companies were revising, some were pegged to the dollar. What did we do at that point? We strongly emphasized internal hiring. So when someone left us, instead of hiring a replacement from the market, we promoted all the people inside a little bit upwards. I even want to show you an example of a purely mathematical calculation. Imagine you have a team with a chief engineer, senior engineer, junior engineer, and assistant engineer with realistic salaries. They all earn $3,000. Now you lose the chief engineer and have to find a replacement. The market has moved forward and the salary on the market is now $1,200. If you look for a replacement, your costs for these people increase by $200 or 6.5%. But if you do it differently, promote the senior engineer to chief engineer, give him a 20% raise to $950. Move the engineer to senior engineer, give him a 20% raise, and do this with everyone, then look for someone for the lowest position. Usually during a crisis, Students and people without experience lower their expectations, so the market doesn't grow as much during a crisis for entry-level positions. By giving everyone about a 20% raise, you actually end up saving $300 or 10%. This seems strange at first, but it actually works really well. When we did this for 2 years at STB, I would sit down at the end of the year, curious to see the results. I knew we hadn't revised anyone's salaries that year. We didn't have the budget. If there were any revisions, it was because people moved to new positions. I took a list of all our employees from the beginning of the year and looked at how their salaries changed on average by the end of the year. And I saw that people's salaries increased by 15% on average. Just because of these mass transitions, we had a lot of open positions. From a business development perspective, we were trying to grow during the crisis. So without increasing our total payroll, we raised people's salaries by 15%. For those who were with us from the beginning to the end of the year, and this salary increase affected many people, about 35 to 40% of our people changed positions over the year. The next problem during a crisis. There's an excess of candidates in the market, but they're far from the best. Hiring managers say, there are massive layoffs happening, so find us a great employee. In 2008, when the first crisis hit, many believed this at first, but quickly realized that there weren't more A players in the market. There were simply more employees, let's say of low or average quality, but this didn't make hiring A players any easier. It actually creates more work for recruiters, having to screen candidates even more, because companies are holding on to their best employees. So you really have to evaluate more thoroughly. You can implement phone or online pre-screening practices rather than inviting a large number of people for interviews. Communicate preliminarily. Introduce competency-based interviews to clearly evaluate people on their abilities, not just which companies they've worked for. For example, when I was hiring people in 2009 after the crisis, it was for a Ukrainian company without a big name, Marcom. I had a bunch of resumes from people who worked at top companies, Procter & Gamble, Kraft Foods. Those were popular back then, now other companies are in vogue. I don't remember if Mars was one of them, but there were many. I thought, great, now we'll hire top employees. But when they came for interviews, I realized something was off. I understood that these were likely the worst representatives of those companies, because they answered my questions worse than people from less well-known companies. So use test assignments during interviews, gather references, because we've had cases where a candidate seemed good, but when you collect references, it turns out they were stealing or had alcohol problems. These kinds of issues come up. Next, employed candidates are afraid to leave stable companies. Indeed, during a crisis, instead of A players becoming easier to hire, it actually becomes harder, because the best don't leave their companies and are afraid to change jobs, fearing instability. So if your company is stable, truly a great stable company where people have nothing to fear, you need to explain this to people in detail. Look, we didn't lay anyone off. For example, at STB TV channel during crises, we were hiring. Look, we didn't cut anyone. Yes, times are tough right now, but we haven't laid off anyone at all. Tell them how long people work for you on average. Tell them you have a low turnover rate, that you continue to hire new employees. If your company is less stable, but you desperately need a top candidate for your business, then you need to negotiate. Say, okay, come work with us. If you leave, we'll pay you compensation, but this needs to be agreed upon. And say, let's try working together, either in parallel or during your vacation, so you can get to know us and understand whether it's risky to join us or not. Next, during a crisis, it's very difficult to poach anyone or even tell anyone about your job openings, because top performers are really afraid. They're scared when recruiters contact them. They think, what if my employer is testing my loyalty? And I don't even want to stutter at all that I'm even considering anything so I don't get fired. That is, people have fear. So you need to change your approach. You don't have to say if you're considering a job, you have to say what a great job you have if the person knows someone who could handle it, and only then gently ask, and you there look at what is happening on the market line. There's the straight text, the script, I'll leave you with in this presentation. So that's how, for example, I hired people when I worked for companies during the crisis. I mean, when I approached them, I didn't force them right away. Because if you say right up front, are you interested in the job? And the first answer is no, people are afraid to check. People are afraid that someone will accidentally find out that they looked somewhere even just at someone else's job posting. With this one, the fear is real. Next, there's an uncertainty in hiring managers in times of crisis that someone needs to be hired. The hiring managers are afraid to hire, afraid to make a mistake because they want the best employee. They're questioning whether it's realistically worth it to take on one more person or if they can wait. I mean, they have such doubts. Your job here is to help them. Implement a scoring sheet to capture valuable candidates, show the results of competency-based interviews, and tell the pros and cons of each competency. Help the supervisor. Make a list of questions for the supervisor to ask candidates in the interview. Show how much you have worked the candidate, that this is a good choice, and this candidate is 1 in 300. And unobtrusively push to hire, creating a sense of urgency and value for the candidate. This is also where I show an example of a candidate presentation to the hiring manager so that the hiring manager realizes that there is no need to delay, the candidates need to see. So this is where you have to describe the candidate correctly. And another option is a technique called FAB. This too is for candidate presentation. Here you go. What else happens during a crisis? Often there isn't even a budget for recruiting and marketing tools, not even for posting job openings. Here you can try not to negotiate any budgets for many jobs at once or for access to a resume database, but clearly pinpointed to a specific vacancy. We'll post this vacancy here, we'll pay this much for it. I mean, it's more likely to be agreed to like this rather than some budget at the beginning of the year. Use sourcing tools to find candidates. That is, without having a budget, you can search for candidates in different channels if you know how to do it. And many sites have free publications, use them. What if the candidate's morale is low and the hiring manager doesn't like that? When I was looking for people during periods of mass layoffs, I encountered people coming in who had had their salaries cut, bonuses slashed, who have lost their jobs, who have been downsized, who can't find a job for a long time, and they're really stressed out. Of depression, they look lethargic and unconvincing. And understandably, hiring managers are wary of hiring such people too. You need to motivate these people a little bit here, prepare them for the interview, encourage them, schedule the interview in the morning when the person has the pep talk, offer coffee, drink, say progress code, say put on a shirt or floor, maybe a suit, so that a person looks presentable in spite of everything, so that he radiates confidence and optimism. Next, what other downsides are there to hiring in the face of uncertainty? We'll go through it point by point too. First of all, there's often no hiring plan. That's also a difficulty because you trivialize it. When who needs to be hired, you don't understand the resources needed, the team needed, and hiring managers don't know. Here it is better to organize a quarterly meeting with key executives and ask, well, what are your plans for the coming quarter? Could there be any vacancies? If so, which ones, how many? That is, from them to collect their opinion, not to ask them to inform them in advance. They may not know in advance. Just keep in contact and gather that information. There are times when this one is also very difficult and painful. You open up jobs here and here you're laying people off, or you cut 100 people there yesterday and today you need to hire 20. It can also be such an imbalance and a disadvantage, and people can get frustrated, upset by that. It's important when you lay someone off to offer them help in finding a job as much as possible. Maybe they're to improve the resume to help. Maybe send some recruiter, help improve their profiling, melons, or even hire a placement company. Think about it. Maybe the company is willing to pay some kind of compensation when you downsize. And conduct exit interviews with those who are being laid off, definitely with each person being downsized. Ask if they would be willing to return to the company in the future if there is a suitable vacancy. If they are willing to leave without resentment, consider them as candidates. Next, this one's tricky too. When you're hiring candidates, if things are shaky in your company, you can't guarantee them stability. If you're required by candidates to do this, recognize the fact that you're not sure there won't be a downsizing or something. That is, you don't have to promise that everything will be fine. You don't have to worry. But tell us that this one, we have stable or past crises, how the company went through, and talk about how the company behaves when instability hits, how it helps employees. So it's better to have some facts than some promises. The risk of changing a candidate who has accepted just because there are no other offers. It happens too, and I've had it in my practice. It's really sad when some great candidate can't find a job for a long time. He communicates with you, has a successful interview, and even tries to convince you that your offer is a good one for him, but realizes it's a compromise and then leaves quickly. It's frustrating, it's unpleasant. So what's there to do? Deeply assess the candidate's motivation with different questions. How interesting is the job on a 10-point scale? What's important when choosing a job? Try to research where the candidate has worked previously. How did he, she choose her, him? Why did he get a job there? What was the attraction there? Ask what interviews the candidate has had, what the results were there. That is, whether he chooses you or whether he just doesn't have a trivial choice, no interviews, no offers. What else? When you hire great candidates, it's still hard to keep them here. because great candidates can get offers from other companies. So here, first of all, you need to actively implement processes of adapting employees so that you do not lose them because they see that you have nothing organized. And you need to implement differentiated programs, working with employees where the best, regardless of the situation, get more. So it's that point where you need to tier people, yes, for example, using the same 9 boxes and still best revised salaries. It could be, I don't know, 20% of the staff or even 15 or 10. But people should know that you have better conditions for the best. That is, do not try to equalize all employees. Otherwise, you will lose the best. Above all, you will be left with the worst. How do you attract candidates to accompany a complete problem? We'll take it one at a time too. The first thing I'd like to say is speak the truth. When I went to work for Mark's company, I was faced with a situation. By the way, I was told at the interview by the general director, who was also the owner, that our salary is divided into an official fixed part and a so-called bonus. And that bonus is paid late, 2 months, sometimes 3 months. He said, "What are you going to do about it?" I said I would tell people the truth. And I was hired, and I found out that the recruiter who worked before me, she wasn't telling anyone the truth. She was hiring people. They were leaving quickly. They were leaving with negativity. Anyway, more bad reviews were written. The company had a problem with it. Yes, I went out to work. I found out things as they were, and I told people. First, he told me about the company's vacancy. We have this specialty. If it works for you, let's socialize. Considering there have been huge layoffs and other companies have already had longer wage delays, there have always been people who have been suited to it. Yeah, okay, we're in, and it helped recruit and retain the candidate. That is fluidity. If I had a 50% turnover rate, that is, I left several times during the year, then after I left, I had a 30 to 35% turnover rate because they told the truth right away. So what to do? I've put a point in here for you. It's called a presentation for a hero. When you describe all the downsides, everything as it really is, even maybe trim a little, and be sure to tell us afterward why it's great to work for you. So you need to add something. It's usually said the other way around. Usually tell you why it's great, don't tell you about the cons. Candidates find it later, get scared somewhere, don't trust you, and that's it. Contact will not be lost. Also keep an eye out for company testimonials. Write in a search engine, job reviews, put the name of the company and work with them. I'll tell you a little later what to do with them there. Showcase the company's positives through blockchain and social media. That is the best proof that your company isn't bad is a photo video of your employees having something. For example, here at the link would be the social media of IDEO, a company I've worked with. There are many examples here of a company running a social network. It didn't have a known employer brand, so we tackled the challenge of building an employer brand. Find the benefits of the company and talk about them. Every company has some sort of advantage. They often lie not on the surface, they are often forgotten. So you need to ask employees what they most appreciate companies for, or conduct an EVP survey. That's when I worked at the very same company Markham worked for that had payroll delays. I too questioned why it might be a good thing to work for that company. What does it do? I asked the CEO for the managers and employees. I formed a set of things that it's about working with the world's best brands, that when a person's resume says they've worked with these brands, any company will then hire them. She will not look at the conditions under which the person worked. If he was selling these brands, or there I was looking for brand managers. For brand managers in general, and this is the most important thing, which brands were not promoting, I told them, yes, you're going to have delays in paying this significant portion of your salary, but you'll be working with world-famous brands. Not everyone gets that chance. When you put on your resume that you worked with Hennessy or CM, there were a lot of great brands, you'll get hired by any company because these are global brands that everyone knows. That's how it is. Or whatever other things you have. How do you hire at below market salaries? If you can't hire at market rates, you often need to look at a different industry. It's common practice for a company to say they need someone from their industry, and that industry pays more. Look at another one. I'm about to share a set of ideas. I'll elaborate further about looking at other industries. Look at the people who work for you or your competitors. Where did they come from? From which industries? People often change industries, and maybe your best employees didn't work in the same business before. They may have worked somewhere else, and you need to look there. For example, at STB TV channel, we had IT people, and we couldn't hire IT staff from other TV channels, so we hired from anywhere. They worked as administrators in small companies. People came to us. We had to do a lot of interviewing, testing, finding those diamonds in the rough among many mediocre candidates, but it worked. So you need to remove industry restrictions and put more people through your screening tools. Give them test tasks in your industry. You'll see that people are generally able to adapt to your industry, Adaptability can be quite high. Look in smaller cities. Try posting your job openings in smaller cities, specifying that relocation is required. Review resumes. Arrange relocation assistance. We did this a lot at STTV channel when we couldn't compete with Kiev anymore. We looked in the regions. We specifically combed through cities, resumed databases for these cities, published vacancies, even sent recruiters on business trips, and it provided a small but decent influx of candidates. Searching for part-time candidates. This happens too. These might be people who aren't suited for full-time work, and that's why they don't fit many companies. Now that's great. And it can be people who have remote jobs and are willing to work part-time elsewhere. So you can specify that you're looking for part-time candidates and that it's okay if the candidate has a primary job. You can even allow a person to take calls for their other job in your office. You're solving problems. You can even look for people on maternity leave who are interested in part-time work. There are tons of such cases. For example, at Ideal, we found 2 great managers for accounting and legal departments who were moms on maternity leave with children under 2. They were interested in part-time work. The company said no problem. They worked from 8 to 5, 4 days a week, and that's it. No other ordinary company could offer them such a schedule, but we could. Here's an example of how you can even search for people on maternity leave on social media. They often write about it. Next, you can link compensation to results. Sometimes managers aren't willing to pay a lot because most employees don't show outstanding results. But for exceptional results, managers are sometimes willing to pay more. For example, I was hiring a marketing director at Marcom. Everyone wanted $5,000 or $10,000. We had $3,000, but the CEO was willing to pay a good bonus for great results. So we found a candidate who was okay with $3,000 base salary, and we discussed the results that would earn him a good bonus. When he achieved them, he got it. That's how it works. Next, if you can't pay market salaries, you may need to consider candidates with less experience. Yes, this will make you look at more people because you'll have to search for professionally stronger individuals among those with less experience. But it happens. To screen out a large number of candidates, you can give a test task before the first interview to select only the most suitable candidates and hire them. For example, I've hired recruiters this way several times when I had a modest budget. I hired people with minimal experience, but there were cases where someone had only a year of recruiting experience, yet they knew a lot and had great results closing many vacancies. And so they were no worse than some recruiter with 3 to 5 years of experience. Next, how to deal with negative reviews. This needs to be discussed separately. Yes, let's start one by one. First, find sites where employees leave reviews. I wrote about this a bit earlier. You just search and find them. I've experienced this several times, both in companies I worked for and companies I consulted for. They had negative reviews on special websites. These sites remove reviews for money. Basically, that's what they're designed for. On some sites with negative reviews, we even tried to publish positive reviews, but they simply don't allow them. So they're not interested in that. They're interested in gathering negativity about the company. So there's usually an address down there somewhere. To them, we wrote there, they told us the cost, we transferred money to them, they removed all the reviews, and they blocked new reviews for a year. If this is not possible, try to leave a comment on each review. If the site will allow it, try to leave positive feedback. And you can make it so that people basically don't look for them. Why do people look for company reviews when they interview you? Because they don't have enough information. They want to gather more information. And the first thing they think of is to write some word reviews about the company, how to make sure that there is no lack of information, and that reviews are not looking for you. Prepare what we call a media kit. Mediacs are the media set translated. That's what marketers do. Media Kit is a maximum of information about the vacancy, about the company, about everything you can about the executives, so that the candidate learns as much as possible about your company and the person does not even have the desire to look for something. These are links to company articles, to all your social media, to pics, to videos, to webinars you've done, to a podcast, to a video interview, to a presentation about the company, and so on and so forth. And if you do such a thing, you will still be allowed and stand out from other companies. It just doesn't do it. You can even video record with Loom some sort of story to the candidate and attach lots of different references. Right here at the link will be an example of such a media kit that I once cooked. And here I am showing you what I put in here. I put a bunch of links in. That's it. Then the candidate doesn't have to search for anything. They just take the time to reread all the things that are out there. And he'll see some pictures of your employees, some videos, posts, things like that. How to strengthen your employer brand crisis. First of all, you can have a corporate block in social media. When I worked at Marcom, then at STB TV channel, We didn't have a budget for employer branding. We didn't have many opportunities there at all. Social media back then wasn't even that popular. I created first in the company Marcom, a block on the Blogspot, then on the TV channel STB and led it myself, and it helped a lot. I mean, we had a link to it everywhere in the job texts. I+ shared with the candidates. They read those blogs are still available. They haven't crimped in years. You can even see the author there. You can check it out. They reflect the internal life of the company. Hold events for company employees and be sure to take pictures and post them everywhere. It reinforces the employer brand too. These events, they may not be very expensive, but they, in addition to boosting morale, we'll talk about that separately. They're a really cool way to help your brand. When candidates see that you do something for people, see pictures of employees, preferably smiling, then it motivates them to talk to you. Ask your employees to publish articles. It doesn't cost a lot of money either. Many sites are willing to export articles to post, but this reinforces your employer brand. When you can provide links to articles published by your employees. Preferably in these articles, employees should talk about their experiences with your company, send employees speak at conferences. We do that at Idols, for example. We even gave them t-shirts with the QR code on our vacancy. Our employees went, we helped them make presentations. Our designers designed beautiful presentations for them. It was even suggested that they take a course in public speaking so they could perform better. It reinforces the employer brand too. Next, you can invite employees to participate in podcasts and online courses. The principle is the same. You find where expertise is needed, suggest your staff and help your staff prepare, create a low-budget merch. That is, you can use at conferences, at some events, something very inexpensive about your company, some socks to hand out to people, and that way your company will be remembered. You can run a brand advocate program. If you have people in your company willing to recommend the company, it's easy to find out if you do a survey, and NPS, loyalty survey, even an anonymous one, it's worth finding those people. Call them brand ambassadors, work with them, organize regular meetings for them, help them write articles, help them write posts, give them training in public speaking, in copywriting, give them some sort of sword for some sort of achievement, for performance. That is, in this way, you incentivize your employees, you to recommend you to their friends, acquaintances, and everywhere you can. How do you utilize an internal resource for hiring? Also an interesting point. It's called an inner search, and it's very often underestimated. Most companies only target active internal candidates when they simply send out a job posting. In fact, there are a myriad of ways to engage your own employees. For job closings, there's a lot more opportunity here than the regular belt. Firstly, you can ask managers to nominate employees or HR. For example, when I worked at STB TV channel, we had hard to close vacancies, project managers, chief directors, chief writers, and among the staff, no one responded. We have written honored employees. We are writing, we're looking for someone like that. Send us your resume, but we couldn't find one on the market either. What did we do? And we need to fill this position. We were constantly pestered about it. How can you say no? Where are the candidates? Give us candidates. Well, that's the situation in the market. There's no one. Our people don't want to do it. What did we come up with? We said, look, we have 150 directors. Let's, so to speak, force the best ones to interview for the position of chief director. So I asked the recruiters, who knew many people, come on, pick the best directors you know. Give me a list. I asked the executives, give me a list of the best directors. Having gotten the list, I said, now let's invite them for interviews. And we invited them specifically, hello, you have good reviews. We have an opening. Come in for an interview. And so when people were approached with a concrete offer, they agreed, and we filled many positions this way. Next, you don't even have to announce a competition or nominate. You can just look on LinkedIn for current employees in general who you have. LinkedIn will probably show you suitable candidates for certain jobs. You can look up former employees. Often former employees can be good candidates. They're called boomerang hires, meaning you can offer them to return, and sometimes people are willing to return during a crisis. So don't neglect this option either. Look at those who work with you as freelancers, temporary employees, partners. There might be some great candidates there too. Next, you can leverage the principle of forced recommendations to get your employees to recommend other great candidates to you. For this, you need to use LinkedIn. LinkedIn has this feature where when you find a person, it can show you that person's contacts, and you can, roughly speaking, go through each employee's contacts to find other potential employees. For example, if you're looking for a salesperson, for the sales department, add all current salespeople to your contacts and see what contacts these salespeople have. what other salespeople they know, and ask for comments on each one. Since this person knows these people, they might be able to recommend someone. It's called the forced recommendation method. And another one, set up internal internships and mentorship programs. This doesn't cost money either when people intern for a higher position or when they are mentored by more experienced people. It could also open up a pipeline of candidates for you to grow. How to adapt without money. Last topic today. First of all, most of the items on the adaptation checklist don't require any money at all. I'm providing the link. Secondly, the most effective adaptation is one where the employee is given a lot of attention. And this is primarily one-on-one meetings conducted by HR with employees and the manager. If there are regular one-on-ones once a week with the supervisor and once a week with HR, it again doesn't cost money, but it helps a lot and retains employees. You can also consider a low-budget newcomer package. Here are a few examples. At STB TV channel, we had no money for anything at all, but we came up with the idea of giving new employees fridge magnets with our logo and the words, "Here you are home." We had the STB logo. No, we had it like this. STB's slogan was, "You are at home," and on our magnets it was written, "At work, like at home." These magnets cost us, well, a few cents, less than $1, maybe 25 cents. We printed a bunch of them, we paid for them, we had a box of them, we gave them to new employees. When I joined a startup, there was also no budget, so my team and I came up with these rubber bracelets. Its price is probably 5 cents. I mean, really cheap. We ordered about 100 super cheap, and when a new employee joined, we gave them one. It was so cute, it was cheap, it wore out after a couple of months. I still have it lying around somewhere, but it was already some kind of nice thing. Then we added a badge when we got a little bit of budget, then a pen and notepad. So it's not necessarily about big money. There you go. This was Crisis Recruiting. Homework for those in the course. Choose 5 tips from this session and describe how you can apply them to your work. And if possible, if you can, apply them right away and show the results. What's next? Next, in the second session, we'll talk about crisis payroll management and benefit premium reductions. I will again share my experience, my case studies, and specific tips. That's it. Thank you to everyone who has been online with me. I invite you to take this course and get a full set of tools on how to continue your work in crisis conditions, not get discouraged, benefit the company, develop professionally, and prepare for the next stage of growth. That's all, friends. Thank you all. Bye-bye. See you soon.